All right, now it is fully a football Friday as we get you ready for the NFL's Final Four. It is conference championship weekend in the National Football League postseason. 2 games, 4 teams, hoping for those 2 spots in New Orleans to play in Super Bowl 59. Of course, still in the chase for a Lombardi trophy. The Eagles and the Commanders in the NFC title game. That is first up on Sunday afternoon in Philadelphia. And then the nightcap on a Sunday night and 2 very familiar foes in a very familiar setting. That would be Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City, Missouri, between the Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. And DRS, let's start with that AFC championship game. You see the numbers there. It's still a 1.5 in favor of KC at home. Still just 34 cents of distinction on the money line between these 2 teams. The changing number from our conversation about this game yesterday was a total slightly on a rise from 47.5 now to 48.5. Here we are on the final day that we will discuss this during the week on the early line. Of course, you'll be live on Sunday for Pro Football Today. What are your thoughts about the AFC Championship game to end out this week?
Yeah, they pretty much have stayed the same from the moment we knew that we were going to get the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills, because you're watching the weather reports all week. They really haven't changed at all. 30 degrees at kickoff, high 20s by the time the game finishes. Precipitation never entered into the forecast, and it's not there for Sunday, so it looks like a pretty clean slate. Windy temperatures were never going to be there. 2 to 3 miles an hour, now sit at 4 miles an hour as the estimated number, so it's a pretty clean run all the way through. But we also talked about, like, which game would you look at, and both of them have the chance to score points. But the gameplay, I should say, between Kansas City and Buffalo is so interesting to try to analyze, because so many times I go through my head and say, just make Kansas City into an operational offense where they have to function every time they get the football. They'd have that luxury so many times this year. And the joke, as I always bring out, is Kansas City goes down, takes the opening kickoff, punches in a touchdown, and goes, we don't have to score for 4 more possessions. Oh, no, we're losing a football game. Let's go down and score and take the lead again. Those are the jokes we have. But I would love to see the pressure put on them by the Buffalo Bills early in that game to force Kansas City out of its shell. But also understand this, which we're going to get to. History does matter. And let's understand this. From a fan perspective, for me, I would like nothing more than to not have to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs for 2 more weeks as they line up to a Super Bowl, because we do it every single year. The Bills are a fun story. Josh Allen finally clearing that final hurdle to get to the Super Bowl. And the Buffalo Bills fans, one of the more painstakingly passionate fan bases that have gotten kicked in the head more times than anybody else and haven't been to a Super Bowl since the early 1990s. But also understand this, we are handicappers here where you can cheer for one side and still bet the other side. Because also, Ben, my stance hasn't changed. I will root for the Buffalo Bills. In no way, shape, or form am I betting the Buffalo Bills getting 1.5 points at Arrowhead in an AFC Championship game. Now, Ben, yes, they could win that game, and I will root for them to do that. But my money will be nowhere near the Buffalo Bills in this game.
And I think it's really fair. This is the Kansas City Chiefs, who are playing in their 7th consecutive AFC title game, hosting 6 of those 7. In the previous 6 AFC championship games, a victory in an appearance in a Super Bowl. In those 4 Super Bowl berths, 3 Lombardi trophies, including 2 consecutive. Here is the history at stake for Mahomes and KC come Sunday night. DRS, Kansas City, now the 9th team ever in the history of the NFL to win 2 consecutive Lombardi trophies. The prior 8, 3 of them only made a conference championship game the following season in that 3-peat chase. Nobody has ever even appeared in a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl of any of those 8 previous back-to-back Super Bowl winners. If Kansas City gets to the Big Easy, that would be another notch of history in this dynastic run, let alone trying to win said Lombardi trophy. Are you going to be the person to step in front of that train and that trend? There's a lot of people that believe it is Buffalo's time right here, right now. And it's not just the Chiefs doing this as of late, and it's this upstart Bills team led by an MVP contender in Josh Allen. The Chiefs have made it to the AFC Championship game or a Super Bowl often, Donnie, in the last 5 years, rolling over Buffalo in the most significant stages of a season in the playoffs. 2020 AFC Championship game in KC. The Chiefs win by 2 touchdowns. That wonderful divisional round game, 13 seconds overtime, and Allen never gets the football back, but the Chiefs victorious. Last year, the game was in Western New York. The Chiefs were an underdog. It was supposed to be the end of this dynasty era in Kansas City, and KC still wins outright. So there's the Chiefs' playoff pedigree that is more than deserved and, of course, earned. And there's also the Chiefs being the playoff nemesis Buffalo cannot slay. And again, I am not so sure I am going to be the guy to jump in front of that, despite the overwhelming public love for the Buffalo Bills in terms of what we are seeing based on the stats on the FanDuel Sportsbook.
Exactly. And it's crazy to say, like, Patrick Mahomes could go down single greatest football player we've ever seen play, Hall of Fame status, 7 Super Bowls. But even in this game, I look at it and say, based on how the offenses operate, I find myself saying, like, you know what? I think Josh Allen is the more important quarterback to have for his team. You say, no, that's crazy. What are you talking about? Patrick Mahomes, you just said, could be one of the best ever. I just feel that juice and that vibe that's going to come from Allen, knowing that it's going to all be put on his shoulders and he must dominate this game, but also understanding the capabilities where we said this last year, Ben. Finally, Kansas City. You don't control your path to the Super Bowl. And if you win, you're going to have to beat the Dolphins, which, again, it was in an unbelievably freezing cold. It was at home, and the Dolphins were really injured. All right, they beat them. But you know what? Now you're going to get it. You're not going to Buffalo winning that game. And if you get lucky to do that, you are going to get slayed in Baltimore like nobody's ever seen. And you know what they did last year? They went to Buffalo and to Baltimore and then beat a more talented San Francisco team in the Super Bowl. And now we're going to say this year, like, yeah, finally, Patrick Mahomes hasn't played all that well on offense. This team just knows how to win and get it done. And also, this team understands how to dictate pace. And what have we seen a couple of years ago? Kansas City will outscore you, but in the fourth quarter, they just need to make one stop. Now we've turned over to Kansas City's not going to turn the football over, and their defense is going to punish you, and they'll score just enough points to get a victory and move on to the next round. That's the dilemma that we have, because you can say to me, you know what? I think Buffalo overall is the better football team, and I might agree with you, but just not in the circumstances. Because even if this game was in Buffalo, I might still be saying the same thing, like, good luck. Look what happened last year. Home field advantage for a healthy football team with Steve Spagnuolo and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, where you just say, Ben, they have to win. Yes, they have to cover 1.5. If they win 28-27, so be it. Congratulations, you covered on the Bills. But you're asking Kansas City to lose this game at home, which is something they rarely ever do.
And, Donnie, you see that money line, right? Minus 126 for KC, plus 108 for the Bills. A slight bit of movement on this football Friday morning. 4 cents. Now minus 122 for KC, plus 104 for Buffalo. All right, Ben, why are we talking about less than a nickel? Because in a game that is expected to be decided by this tightly contested margin, that is noteworthy. 60% of the bets on the spread for the Bills. And yet the line has basically stayed right there. I don't think the odds makers would want to make KC a home underdog with a conference championship on the line at all. But there's a lot of love for the Bills. And, Donnie, maybe it's the idea that this is finally the Chiefs team that is not playing at its highest ever elite level that will finally be knocked off its perch. Maybe it's just, we've seen these guys before, and they get all the calls from the Zebras. We don't want them to play once again in a Super Bowl. But the betting public is on Buffalo. What about that total? Because you said KC's offense will do just enough behind a stifling defense. Well, we'll talk that 48.5 and what we expect the offensive flow to look like in Arrowhead on Sunday. Led by the 2 quarterbacks, a showdown once more between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. We continue to get you ready for the AFC Championship game on Sunday night in Arrowhead. It's the Chiefs and the Bills meeting up in an NFL postseason for the 4th time in the last 5 years. It's been all KC previously. Is it going to continue to be that way? They have also been high-scoring games on both sides. 27-24, the lowest-scoring game from a season ago in the previous 3 playoff matchups between these two. That's still 51 combined points, which would be over our total for Sunday evening, now standing at 48.5 up by a full point from where it was, DRS, earlier in the week. Just how much offense are you anticipating at Arrowhead come Sunday night?
Yeah, if we looked at both games, the game that you would be leaning towards probably going over for me all week was Buffalo and Kansas City, because the engagement here, which you should have, I don't care how good your defense is. You just look at the Buffalo Bills offense and that hot run that it's been on. Like you said, Donnie, what's more likely? The Buffalo Bills to go over their team total or under the team total, regardless of who wins this game? I would still say over, because I'm expecting the Buffalo Bills to push some pace against Kansas City, and Kansas City will be forced to respond. How many times have we watched even the Houston game last week? If you're not putting pressure with your offense on Kansas City's defense, Kansas City's offense will reciprocate and say, okay, let's get first down. Let's see if we can get in field goal range. Let's make sure we get some points. We don't have to be all that aggressive. But if you put Kansas City in a hole, which is something they haven't been in quite many, two scenarios this year, keep in mind too, like we talk about Kansas City as ripe for the upset. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes sat out the final game of the season where they got blasted by Denver. Take that game away. Mahomes lost one time this year. You say, yes, it was towards the Buffalo Bills. I get that. But you have ebbs and flows, good games, bad games, injuries that come in, and the Kansas City Chiefs never flinched the whole year. So this isn't a team that I always say, hey, they squeaked in a bad division at 10-7, got a little hot in the playoffs with good matchups, and oh no, the Buffalo Bills are here. This is a dominant football team from start to finish this year that's not getting a lot of respect, that's coming off of 2 world championships, looking for a third. And I was talking to Kevin yesterday on the radio, and how interesting would it have been if the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs game number 1 went the Kansas City Chiefs direction? We might be talking about the Kansas City Chiefs unbeaten on the season, looking for a Super Bowl. So that's where I like to start with the total, because I agree with that movement. 47.5 to 48.5. If you engage Kansas City, they will return fire. But it seems like nobody can engage Kansas City because their defense has been that good. Josh Allen just might be that cheat code that goes, I don't care about Chris Jones. Oh, he's going to wreck the pocket? Yeah, I'll scamper outside and make plays with my feet and hit some guys downfield like Khalil Shakir. I got 2 competent tight ends. I have my best running back that I've ever had since I've been in Buffalo right now in Cook. So let's get after it. I look at that 47 to 48.5 band, and I still think it has a great chance to get into the 50s.
And listen, the Buffalo Bills are a top 3 scoring offense in the NFL. They are one of 3 teams alongside the Lions and the Ravens this year to average better than 30 points per game. They basically scored 30 in 9 of their last 11 when everybody was out there. And you see the distinction, Donnie, between the points scored by a team and the points allowed. That has been the story for this KC team. Last year, it was, uncharacteristic football, dropping games they never would, only 11 wins. And again, only 11 wins is funny, but that's the standard that Kansas City holds itself to. They had to go on the road starting in the divisional round. They were an underdog in their final 3 matchups to eventually win a Lombardi trophy. And we scoffed at the idea that KC should ever be booked as an underdog in a critical postseason game. This year, they have won basically every game, except for week 11 in Buffalo, mind you, booked as an underdog. But the issue with the Chiefs now is, they haven't been overwhelmingly impressive. They're not blowing anybody out. They can't cover in games they are expected to win big. I don't know how many times Donnie has said that throughout this week. It doesn't matter if they win this game by 3 or 6 or 10. They just need to win the game outright, as the money line is telling you right here, right now. Donnie, I do believe we flirt with that total. Will we go over 48.5? I'm not entirely sure. But I don't think this is a Chiefs game we have seen throughout this season. 14-10, 17-14, 20-17. I do believe both teams will touch at bare minimum 20. In KC, of course, continuing its dynastic playoff run. 19 total playoff games. The Chiefs have won 16. They have covered in 13. They have gone under 10 times and over in 9. And it's these 2 teams, these 2 franchises, competing against each other for a 4th time in the last 5 postseasons. It's also these 2 quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes has all of the accolades, but can Josh Allen in this year, the best potentially of his NFL career, finally do enough to pull off the upset? DRS, when you look at the numbers, how do you compare the QBs for Sunday?
Yeah, it makes sense because Patrick Mahomes should have the advantage this week. And say, well, Donnie, you just said that Josh Allen's the ultimate equalizer. He is, but understand this too. Just looking at simple metrics here, let's go by Pro Football Focus. Number 2 defense in the NFL, it's Kansas City. You know, as a bottom 5 defense rated in the NFL, it's the Buffalo Bills. So you saw last week, and we have to take recency bias always out of the equation. The Texans got a damn good defense. It's way better than the Buffalo Bills defense. So if you take a look at last week, they struggled last week against Houston's defense. A lot of teams struggled against Houston's defense this year. But now you're looking at the Kansas City Chiefs who have been absolutely lights out. This might be, Ben, the best version that Kansas City's ever had on defense in the Patrick Mahomes era right now. On their side, at home, in cooler temperatures here. That's the advantage. So you see those numbers, 1.5 touchdown passes. There's a reason why, Patrick Mahomes, that offense doesn't really move the football, where he's juiced much more to throw 2 touchdowns than Jared Allen is. And Josh Allen, But the fact of the matter is, Josh Allen, when you're running the football, I don't really love Kansas City's running game. I do like, the running game per se, if we look at the quarterback and the running back with Cook on Buffalo's side. But to me, that's all it comes down to. I give the nod to Mahomes, not because I think he's overall better quarterback. He's got a way easier matchup to move the football than, let's just say, Josh Allen.
We'll talk about Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the break and his historic numbers in prior AFC championship games because, of course, there is a large data size to look at for Kansas City. All 7 years with Mahomes as the starting QB, they have played in the AFC championship game. Josh Allen, Buffalo's leading rusher during the regular season against KC, and has utilized his legs often against the Chiefs in the past. Plenty more next. Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid, we continue to break down each and every angle of our conference championship games for this Sunday. Now just 48 hours out, we look at the AFC championship game and that quarterback matchup that, of course, will have all the eyeballs, the attention, the notoriety, and thus the narratives. Patrick Mahomes' number, 249 and a hook. Didn't even clear 200 last week against the Texans. This Chiefs offense, they're not nearly as good as they were back in 2021 or even 2019. But, Donnie, in AFC championship games, that's where Patrick Mahomes steps up. 241 yards and a touchdown last year against the Ravens in Baltimore. That was the only of his 6 AFC title matchups without multiple passing touchdowns. He has only thrown an interception in 1 of his prior 6 AFC championship games. That was in the loss to Cincinnati in 2021. He has 15 touchdowns to 2 INTs in the 6-game sample size around those AFC championships, and he has thrown for at least 290 outside of last year in every single one. I shared yesterday the first bet I locked in for this specific matchup is Patrick Mahomes over 249 and a half, because I do believe this game will feature offense and points, and I think Kansas City, regardless of what happens to the outcome, will prove once again that they can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the NFL.
You're right. And also matchups, styles make fights here. You saw last week cold temperatures there. Houston's got a really good secondary, including 2 wonderful cornerbacks. You don't really have that with the Buffalo Bills all that much. And you also have a healthy wide receiving core. You take a look at last week, a couple guys were invisible. Hollywood Brown didn't really do anything. DeAndre Hopkins didn't do anything because that means that secondary is blanketing them. Now you're going to have to pick your poison this week. Andy Reid's going to scheme some things up, which leads to a pretty good day for Mahomes. And also it leads to a good day for Mahomes. And I do think Buffalo's going to be able to counterpunch whatever Kansas City does, or at least move the football to keep them as a viable option. Because usually you would say, well, wait a second, Patrick Mahomes 250 and a half in this game. Get out of here. You know what they're going to do? Slow the game down. It'll be 7-6 at the half. They'll be down, 10-6 or whatever, and they're 10-7 in the second half. And it'll be like, you know what? They'll finally score on that possession. And it might end that way. But I'm expecting way more out of the Buffalo Bills saying, you know what? We are going to be so aggressive in this game because the way you knock out the champion is not kicking field goals on 4th and 2 at the 13-yard line. The expectations, which we're going to go over some picks that we like at the end of the show, and it does deal with the kicking game here. I love the ultra-conservative championship games that you do see, but I like even more the ultra-aggressive games like, ooh, you know what? This team is actually playing to win, not playing to let's see if we can keep it close at the end of the football game.
And teams have always been trying to figure out that blueprint. How do you beat the Chiefs? Do you keep it away from their lethal offense? Now, do you outscore them from the jump and try to have them play from behind? All of those decisions all of those game plan X's and O's will go into the prop market. Josh Allen, by the way, at least 68 rushing yards in the previous 3 matchups in the postseason against KC. You see that number, 47 and a half. He had 55 in the regular season win in Western New York in Week 11. He was Buffalo's leading rusher. But really outside of that game, DRS, James Cook has had a sensational season. Through the 1,000-yard mark for a second consecutive year. Did not score last week as I thought he might against the Ravens, but has scored 17 rushing touchdowns this season. That's near the top of the NFL. What do you expect that Buffalo rushing attack to look like against this stout Chiefs front in the idea often, Donnie, let's keep the football out of Patrick Mahomes' hands?
They're all correlated, right? You saw last week, and I was saying, you know what? This is going to really hurt the Houston Texans. Joe Mixon, who I like a lot as a running backs, coming in with a bum ankle in this game. Boy, if he's not effective, they won't be able to hang around. He looked a lot better and a lot healthier than I thought. So why can't we get similar numbers out of an even more explosive running back in Cook? Because the one thing you're not worried about with Houston, right? When you see that RPO-type game, yes, C.J. Stroud can run, but it's not a focal point of the Texans' offense. Now when you take a look and say you have to respect the quarterback in the backfield every time he runs an RPO, that gives you extra lanes. And also, Mixon is a great running back. You know who's more explosive? It's James Cook in that environment. So correlation for me, if Buffalo wants to hang around this game with a legitimate chance to win, I don't think they can do it with 37 yards from James Cook.
I think it's a great point. $1.24 Cook in the opening playoff game against Denver. Under this number last week, but the Ravens, again, the best rushing defense by far all season long in the National Football League. The Chiefs don't really have that punch, but they'll hope to get it done with 2 guys that, of course, have won AFC titles for KC in the past. Kareem Hunt, 3 yards higher than that of Isaiah Pacheco in terms of their rushing yards props. Hour number 2 of a Football Friday. That's next. It is hour number 2. It is a Football Friday. Getting you ready for Conference Championship Sunday. Now just 2 days out around the National Football League. The big guns are here for a Football Friday. That is Donnie Rightside. I just humbly proud to serve you on the early line today. I am Ben Stevens. 2 more hours to go. Plenty of deep dives and breakdowns continuing to come your way around each of our 2 conference championship matchups for Sunday. We are already breaking down the AFC championship game. We'll continue to peer into the prop market, and then we'll turn it over to the NFC championship game, our first of 2 on Sunday in Donnie's neck of the woods with Donnie's team, the Philadelphia Eagles, hosting the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, and we'll get some help in the next hour. Tom Vecchio is going to join us, as well as Mark Zeno gave fabulous breakdowns yesterday. We might have them live. We might just have to run the replays back of their handicaps of that Commanders-Eagles game. So we'll be after it. We got a lot of help coming over the next 2 hours, people. Don't you go anywhere.
I think what he is alluding to is the fact that we had a couple of great guests yesterday. And if Donnie could take a break and we look at some of the videos from 2 guys that were heavily invested, it appeared in the Eagles, that would be great because you haven't been here on a Football Friday in a while. But Mike Blewitt is a staple of a Football Friday. Right. He will join us here in hour number 2. DRS, we talked about the AFC Championship game. We compared the quarterbacks. We looked at the backfields, both for Buffalo and, of course, in Kansas City. Now, the pass catchers. Neither has that true number 1 wide receiver. But when it comes to the postseason, the number 1 always for the Chiefs is the tight end, Travis Kelce. Here to remind us of that exactly a week ago against the Houston Texans. 117 yards and a touchdown. The second most receiving yards, now north of 2K in NFL playoff history. It's the most prolific, or one of the most prolific playoff connections between quarterback and receiver in the history of the NFL. Do you expect it to continue as such against the Bills come Sunday night?
Why not? Absolutely. It's not a great Bills defense here that you're going up against. And also, it just figures where you got Travis Kelce rested and ready. Didn't we think he lost his step last year? Been like, oh, man, slow down in the regular season, gets charged up and is dominant throughout the playoffs. This looks like we're rolling back the clock 5 to 6 years on Travis Kelce with the actual effort that we've seen over the past playoff game. And it's going to extend in this one, I do believe. 67.5. You might say, though, boy, that's a lot of numbers. And then you say to yourself, and you'll listen to the telecast, and they'll be yelling, I don't understand. It's 3rd and 8, and Kelsey is wide open. Well, it's not they don't cover him. It's they scheme him to get open, and it's brilliance by Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes knowing exactly where those two guys are supposed to be, reading defenses, and throwing in and out of the break. Will I be betting on Travis Kelsey's over 67.5 or under? No, I won't. But I'm not going to be surprised when Travis Kelsey has 5 catches for 68 yards at the half saying, wow, that's amazing. Kelsey actually showed up in a big game when he shows up damn near every single big game. So from a pass catching perspective, Kelsey's the top end there. I'm probably not going. But if you do look down, Xavier Worthy's, to me, their number 1 overall wide receiver. He's at 49.5. That makes sense. Marquise Brown, who had some shine here late in the season, didn't really do anything at all in the previous playoff game against Houston. That will start to open up. But one of those buy low spots that I like, and I took it 2 different ways. The one that I did take yesterday, and I'll tell you what I'm going to have on the show is, you look at DeAndre Hopkins. You look at his schedule throughout the season. Every single game, Ben, 4 to 5 catches, 30-plus yards as that staple to say, you know what, 3rd and 5, throw a quick slant. 1st and 10, throw it out to him. Let me get a couple yards here. I look at the 24.5. I'll speak on that a little bit later, but I went over 2.5 receptions at a plus 110 price yesterday, figuring that, yes, understandably, he didn't look good last week. It was a play where or should I say a defense that was really schemed to say, beat us deep. And that's not really what he does. He's more the intermediate route with Houston is fantastic at covering. So I bought back in on DeAndre Hopkins because I can just see this too. If we get a little bit more of a wide open game with close to 50 points, that means extra passes and extra receivers in routes. So I took a low point on DeAndre Hopkins at a plus money with 2.5 receptions.
I think it's a great look, DRS. Only 4 Chiefs receivers were targeted multiple times last Saturday against the Texans. Travis Kelce, 8. Xavier Worthy, 6. Noah Gray, 3. Hollywood Brown, 2. But again, when you look at Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes last week only had 177 yards, a $117 to Travis. He only had 16 completions. Nearly half of that, 7 receptions for Travis Kelce. He threw a touchdown. Who did it go to? Travis Kelce. Last year in the divisional round in Buffalo, Kelce, 5 grabs, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is what he does. Last week, the prop against Houston, maybe the best bet I have made all season in the NFL, was 51.5. He doubled that up. It is now up by 16 yards week over week, game over game to 67.5. And you see the numbers for Buffalo. Not a ton, right? Khalil Shakir has been the leading receiver for the Bills all season long. Targets, grabs, and receiving yards. He has that highest number at 55 and a hook. And let's just finish with one thought, DRS, on the Bills. Tough to look at Josh Allen last week and expect to see that same performance. Less than 150 total yards for Allen, despite 2 rushing scores. There is no way he pitches a similar performance in Kansas City, in my estimation, and Buffalo wins that game. And if we do see the offensive output that I kind of anticipate, I think Allen can go over both of those numbers, which means Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, whoever it might be, are apt to go over their short receiving yards props as well.
Yeah, because the one thing we're not going to factor on is that the Buffalo Bills are going to be +3 in the turnover margin going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Right. They'll be lucky to even have a plus in the turnover margin if it's 1-0 at that point. But you're right about this, because you do try to find levels to this. We understand Khalil Shakir is the number 1 wide receiver in the slot. He's going to get some pretty critical cornerbacks going up against him here. So for me, when I look at this and say, you see the 230 price on Josh Allen. Let's just say he gets to 230. Well, if Khalil Shakir gets his, let's just say 60 yards, 65 yards, somebody else is going to have to eat. And it's not as if you're looking at, which we'll talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, which on a typical Sunday when everybody's healthy, hey, A.J. Brown's 80.5 yards. And then you take a look at, let's just say, Devontae Smith at 71.5. Look at the value you're getting across the board when you figure in a game that's close to 50 points, it really doesn't match up. Dalton Kincaid, 32.5. Amari Cooper, who was brought in to be that number 1 veteran presence, down to 17.5. You take a look at Keon Coleman, the young rookie there, 20.5. Dawson Knox, 15.5. The reason I'm bringing this up is these numbers are so low. Somebody, including multiple wide receivers, are going to have to go over that number, Ben, just to achieve Allen getting close to 230.
It's a great point, Donnie. If he even attempts to get close to 230, 225 plus, which you would think he would have to outshine Mahomes and to win an AFC championship and to send Buffalo back to a Super Bowl for the first time in more than 3 decades since 1993, guys are going to have to be out there to catch those passes. Khalil Shakir, even as the top target, his number is 55 and a hook. All right, Donnie, from the AFC Championship game to the NFC Championship game. Let's look at these numbers, and then, of course, we will continue the conversation on the other side. A 6.5-point spread in favor of Philadelphia, nearing a touchdown at Lincoln Financial Field, and a total at 47 and a half. You see nearly a touchdown spread and a total of 47 and a hook. DRS, what is your first thought for the NFC Championship game, our first of two on Sunday?
You look at the line movement. Once again, we talked about it all week long. The opening number at FanDuel Sportsbook here in New Jersey was 4.5 points. You look at right now, it's 6.5 points. We'll see. I would probably say, Ben, it's going to settle between 6 and 6.5 by the time we get to Sunday, unless we get some crazy information like everybody's healthy or multiple people aren't going to be playing this game from either side of the equation. Yeah. But for me, you also look at those 7 out of 10 tickets coming on the Commanders and understanding that line going higher and not lower, despite being a big time public dog. And the one thing that we always say in this industry, boy, oh boy, if the public is loving an underdog, tuck your tail and run the opposite direction. Does it always work that way? No. It's just an interesting line movement this week, Ben.
Let's get you ready for Philly next. A best of 3 between divisional mates for a conference championship on the line Sunday in the city of brotherly love at Lincoln Financial Field. It's the Eagles and the Commanders, a 6.5-point spread in favor of Philly at home, a total of 47 and a hook. Of course, DRS, 2 organizations hailing from the NFC East, so they meet up twice per season in the regular season. Each team held serve on its own home field. Philadelphia won game number 1 back in Week 11 on a short week Thursday night. The Commanders led early in the opening half. It was basically all Philadelphia in the final 2 quarters. And a huge night, stop me if you've heard this before, for Saquon Barkley. 26-18, the victory for the Birds. Week number 16, the game outside the nation's capital in Landover. Jalen Hurts exits about 5 minutes into the game with a concussion. Kenny Pickett comes in. The Eagles lead early. The Commanders turn the football over 5 times. But then Jayden Daniels continues to make rookie history. 5 touchdown passes to overcome 5 turnovers for his team. The Commanders win game number 2, 36-33, outright as a 3.5-point home underdog. All right, DRS, which sets the stage for this NFC Championship matchup that is nearing a touchdown. And I do want to dive in to something you said right before the break. 70% of the bets on the spread are on the Commanders. But didn't you guys say this line opened at 4.5 on Sunday afternoon after the Eagles outlasted the Rams in snowy Philadelphia? Yep. Wasn't it 5.5 on Monday almost immediately? Yep. Isn't Jalen Hurts dealing with a left knee injury? Also correct. And the line is now nearing a touchdown despite 70% of the public backing that plucky underdog? Yep. Something you should know entering the NFC title game on Sunday.
It makes sense. Like, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles. It's hard to win on the road. We understand that. And understand this, too. Washington has won some playoff games on the road. Nobody's taking that away from them. It's a great franchise right now. Looks like they're headed in the positive direction, maybe a lot sooner than later. Because if they come into Philadelphia and upset the Eagles and head to the Super Bowl, my goodness, lights out for the next decade, it would feel like, on Jayden Daniels and the Commanders. But also, we have to be realistic about what we are watching. The Eagles are a good football team. I know some people might have watched that game last week. Hey, the Eagles got lucky to win. No, the Eagles went to a prevent defense in the final 3 minutes and almost cost themselves the game, meanwhile winning by double digits late. Take that out of the equation. Also understand this. Saquon Barkley is something that, you know, you look at like the O.J. Simpsons and maybe the CJ2Ks back in Tennessee in the day and the Adrian Petersons. But you couple the best offensive line in the sport with the best running back that maybe we've ever seen for a single season in the sport, and match them up and against, according to Pro Football Focus, the 29th ranked rush defense in the NFL. And we've seen Saquon Barkley. The Packers are a much better defense there. Run roughshod over them. You saw the Rams last week in the snow where nobody can even basically stand up. Saquon Barkley's hitting home runs left and right there. That's an advantage. Also, the handicap early in the week for the Philadelphia Eagles for me was, boy, if I could just get, we're not asking for a great Jalen Hurts. Give me a functional Jalen Hurts. Full practice yesterday on a Thursday. You expect the same things here on a Friday. Understand this as well. You're not going up against a chump defense on the opposite side, like for later parts of the season, the Detroit Lions defense was. This is the number one defense by a wide margin in the NFL that stops the run and has the number one rated secondary in football going up against a rookie quarterback. That's understanding this. The Philadelphia Eagles have been home for over a month, haven't left their beds, practice in the same facility, not getting on trains, planes, buses, and planes, trying to head out to play other teams. They're at home. There's a reason they're favored by a touchdown. The old adage for me, they don't pick a number out of a hat and say, perfect, the public will love this line. Everything indicates to a Philadelphia Eagles victory. Are we saying it's going to be a blowout? Is it going to be an easy cover? Probably not at that point. But nobody is heading into this football game looking at the Eagles are lucky to be in this spot at this point, as opposed to watch what Saquon Barkley does. Can he go for 300 yards against the defense and multiple touchdowns? That's the angle to play. One team has a very good defense. The other has a very bad defense, and you sit on that.
47.5 is the total. DRS, you mentioned the defensive outputs that we are going to see. Philadelphia has been the best rated defense in the NFL in large part for the entirety of this season. If the Eagles are to win, it maybe do so comfortably, potentially covering as a 6.5-point home favorite. What does that mean for our over-under of 47.5 points?
The tough part is because both of these games, I think, have a chance to trend towards the over, right? But if we are looking optimistically against the Philadelphia Eagles, you're in a game with the number one ranked defense, but also the number one ranked rush offense. And outside of Saquon Barkley last week hitting home run after home run, these games probably have a tendency to stay under the total for me, because that's the gameplay that the Philadelphia Eagles would like to use. We're going to use that clock. We're going to score touchdowns. We're going to play great defense, and away we go. Until the final 5 minutes, where teams or games usually get a little bit helter-skelter at that point, because you're just trying to score, turnovers happen, and you get all that. So my vantage point for me is I would lean, let's just say both games, over in the Buffalo game, under in the Philadelphia game.
I would agree. I think if the Commanders are going to win this game outright, it is because of a sensational offense that Washington has had all year long. And DRS, you mentioned the Eagles. I don't think anybody in their right mind would consider Philadelphia lucky to be in this spot hosting an NFC championship game. Yeah, I
heard this coming into the playoffs. Nobody wants to play the Packers. Blowout win. Rams, hottest team, most dangerous out there. Eagles are upset. They got to play them. Beat them too. And now you're hearing it about the Washington Commanders. Man, nobody wants to go up against Jayden Daniels. And then they'll go to the Super Bowl. Nobody wants to go up against the Buffalo Bills. Same MO. Yeah. Eagles love this stuff. That's the way it plays out. So it's fun to sort of get into the mix where it's like lucky to be here, because the hot trend was the Packers, wasn't it? The hot trend was the Rams, wasn't it? Now the hot trend is the Commanders. Plays in order.
What was the theme during Super Bowl 52? A hungry dog likes to eat.
Yeah.
Right?
They run faster.
And the masks.
They run faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of that good stuff. The Eagles are not an underdog, of course, a 6.5-point favorite. Maybe they're lucky to be hosting the NFC Championship game and not having to go to Detroit to play in it because of the Commanders, because of Jayden Daniels, because of his historic season that continues, and because he has defied the odds all year long. The quarterback comparison of the props next. Jayden Daniels has had a historic rookie season. Could you call it potentially the best rookie campaign a quarterback in NFL history has ever seen? Yeah, because he is now one of 6 quarterbacks as a rookie to start a conference championship game, hoping to defy a 6.5-point spread and the odds once more to become the first rookie signal caller to start a Super Bowl ever. So let's compare those quarterbacks. The RS will look at both guys. 223.5, the passing yards prop for Daniels, 54.5, the rushing yards number. It is the highest rushing yards prop for anybody that plays for Washington. I ask you the question like this. Is there even a chance the Commanders keep this game within margin, let alone strike the outright upset if Jayden Daniels does not go over both of those numbers?
Or the only other option, I guess, would be that Jalen Hurts is so injured, like the Eagles' offense can't really function but hand the football off in the 3 yards in a cloud of dust. But I think your notion is correct. You look at that and say, well, Jayden Daniels threw for 190. Well, that doesn't bode well. Jayden Daniels ran 14 times for 46 yards. That doesn't look good. And he only threw 1 touchdown pass to Diami on the outside. That doesn't look good. So I do believe it is a correlation. And sometimes there are better ways to bet. Like if you honestly think the Commanders are going to win that football game and say, because Jayden Daniels has a good game, there's a really good chance that Jayden Daniels has an unbelievable game. And they don't even win or cover the spread because you're worried about that Commanders defense and what the Eagles offense can do to you. So I agree with you in that notion. There's not really a correlation that says we get a subpar effort from Jayden Daniels and Washington wins. It feels like it goes hand in hand. He has to have a great game. And even that doesn't guarantee a victory.
Jayden Daniels had arguably the worst game of his rookie season outside of his debut in Tampa in that Week 11 game in Philadelphia. 191 yards, a touchdown late that even made it a single-score game to Zach Ertz, and an interception. Was sacked 3 times by Philly. If the Eagles have Jayden Daniels play that kind of performance, we'll say, ooh, that was a rookie. But Vic Fangio, the Eagles' astute defensive coordinator, said maybe he is a rookie by birth certificate. He is not a rookie when you turn on the tape. That has been incredibly true for the Commanders and their quarterback this season. Donnie, on the other side, Jalen Hurts dealing with that ailing left knee injury. And I think the numbers specifically for the Eagles quarterback reflect that. Not the spread that is now 6.5, but just his props for this NFC championship game. What do the Eagles need out of Jalen Hurts as it correlates to those numbers to be successful on Sunday?
185, which would cover that 179.5, which means he's functional. Running the football enough to keep the defense honest. So let's just say 35 yards. That might include a couple tush pushes. And throwing for at least 1 touchdown pass. Because you have to understand, Saquon's going to get a lot of work in this game. So if you're taking a look at it and saying, you know what, 25 touches at a minimum from handoff plays are coming to Saquon Barkley, how effective does Jalen Hurts have to be? Now, would it be great if he reverts back to that game against the Steelers and throws for close to 300 yards? But they don't need that. But understand this, too. Dan Quinn's pretty smart. He understands that you're not getting 100% Jalen Hurts in the running game for himself. And the way to stop the Eagles is you must limit Saquon Barkley. So therefore, you have 2 dynamite wide receivers on the outside that might be working in one-on-one coverage against a secondary that isn't so good. Those are the advantages. So could the Eagles win if Jalen Hurts throws for 130 yards? They've won games like that this year, but I don't believe that. I believe there are going to be plays to be made in the passing game. Why? Because the defense is going to dictate that. We want to force you. Look, you can be successful on the ground running into 8-man boxes and 9-man boxes. Saquon's hit home runs on that. But that's not the theory. That's not good offensive play where you're lining up and Jalen Hurts goes, boy, I would love to check to a slant to the outside to A.J. Brown, but let's just run it right up the middle into the teeth of the defense. Plays need to be made. And I do think 200 yards passing is not out of the realm, and that easily covers a number for your starting quarterback in Jalen Hurts.
Completely agreed, DRS. Jalen Hurts will be the person I live bet come Sunday once I see what he does. Could I miss a number if he drops back and hits A.J. Brown for 44 yards on the first offensive play from scrimmage for Philadelphia? Sure, but I'll wait and see because I don't want to get spurned. We can see what the expectation is, though, for Saquon Barkley. 24.5, the attempts prop. The over has the juice. 125 and a hook, the yardage prop. Pretty even in terms of the juice. 12.5 receiving yards. Greater than a $2 minus money favorite to hit Pater. We will talk about the high-flying bird that is Saquon Barkley in just a little bit. In fact, we continue to take our deep dive around Conference Championship weekend with a staple of a Football Friday. Mike Blewitt joins the show now. I have said all morning long, the big guns for a Conference Championship Football Friday, live right here on the early line. Donnie Rightside is here. That is why. And now a Football Friday would never be a Football Friday without the services of Mike Blewitt. He joins us here on TEL to preview the Conference Championship matchups, and the deep dives continue on the early line. Blewitt, as always, we appreciate the time.
Excited to be with you down to the last couple of games that we can preview together. So I'm excited for it. I think we have 2 good matchups. Obviously, these teams have met many times before. with these current constructions. I know Jayden Daniels is just in his rookie season, but we've already seen two interesting matchups out of him versus the Eagles. So I'm excited to see what happens. And I'll be covering that one live on Sunday with Joe Rainieri.
Heck yeah. We'll go step by step through each of these games. We'll talk the big picture. We'll talk the point spread. We'll talk the total and the players that will impact the outcome and send at least two teams to a Super Bowl matchup in the Big Easy in just a few weeks. Blewitt, let's start with the AFC Championship game. Two very familiar foes for the fourth time in the last 5 NFL postseasons in a very familiar setting for an AFC Championship. That would be Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City for a 6th time in the last 7 seasons. We're talking a couple of cents on the money line. About a quarter right now, minus 122 in favor of KC, plus 104, the updated number on the other side for Buffalo. A total slightly on the rise, now standing at 48 and a hook. Big picture, Blewitt. You see those numbers first and foremost. You are expecting a high-scoring, highly competitive game. Do you think that is what we will see come Sunday evening in Arrowhead?
Highly competitive for sure. As far as it definitely being high scoring, I wouldn't feel certain about that. Obviously, these teams have played high scoring games before, right? We saw them play to 51 the last 2 times out versus one another, but the one before that, 37, the matchup before that, 44. So there's not a guarantee that we're going to see them up and down the field matching wits all game long. I think 48.5 is a really good number. I'm leaning towards an under because I like the Chiefs. I think the Bills could win an under, but it's more likely to me that it's an over game if the Bills win it. I've said it many times. I think the Chiefs' defensive unit is so good at all 3 levels. They still tend to get undersold because of the presence of superstars on the offensive side, even if they're not playing up to their superstar level. So I think it's a highly competitive game, but I'm leaning towards a lower scoring game. I'm glad to see that the weather in both games won't impact it the way it did in the divisional round. It's fun to have those quirky games with the snow impacting it, but when it's the 4 teams that are left, I'm glad they get to play it straight up.
Yeah, may the best team win. It's great. No excuses here. Oh, we got the football when it really started to rain or snow and the wind kicked up. We're not going to have those expectations. But I want to ask you this question, Mike, because it's around a lot. And I don't know if it's a respect thing where Kansas City's only a 1.5-point favorite. But when this line opened up as such a short favorite, and we still see that late in the week, what are your thoughts? And also, where do you think this line closes come game time?
I don't think it's going to move all that much, Donnie. If it moves, though, I would expect it to move towards the Chiefs. People like favorites at home, and I think that's where you see the money go. But at this point, with the volume of bets on these games, Donnie, the only time we really see major movement late in the week is when very well-respected money is putting huge positions one way or the other. I personally think that those positions will go towards the Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes being a short favorite is money. If this is 6.5, 7, we've seen it before. The Chiefs don't always thrive as big favorites. In fact, obviously against the Texans, we had a lot to talk about regarding the end of that game and the point spread. But I would expect it to move towards the Chiefs, not any greater than 3. Obviously, it gets to 3, it gets bet back the other way towards the Bills, and I don't think the books want that kind of movement. So I'd expect to go towards the Chiefs and Mahomes as a short favorite.
And Blewitt, I did bring up earlier today that the money line currently on FanDuel is minus 122 for the Chiefs, plus 104 for the Bills. It might sound stupid to talk about less than a nickel of movement on the money line, but in a game that is expected to have this margin, I do believe it is noteworthy. And of course, 2 very familiar foes. This will be the 4th matchup in the NFL playoffs in the last 5 seasons between Josh Allen and Buffalo and Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City. Since 2020, when the Bills have now won 5 consecutive AFC East divisional crowns, these 2 teams have met up in the regular season 5 times. 4 victories for Buffalo, including this season. But you see the playoff record between the 2, all Kansas City in all 3 matchups. The Chiefs also 3-0 against the spread. Blewitt, how does the previous postseason history between KC and Buffalo factor into your breakdown for this year's rendition?
I think it's important to note that a lot of times you talk about the head coaches, but in these instances, the coordinators have been there for a while. Steve Spagnuolo has seen a lot of what the Bills have tried to do. Now, obviously, Joe Brady is a relatively new offensive coordinator. He did get a chance to see him in the regular season this year. So I think my take on it is that the familiarity breeds contempt is obviously a line that everybody throws out. But I think the familiarity allows them to be able to check tendencies. And that's why I frankly see it as more of a lower scoring game. In these postseason matchups, teams like to take the air out of the ball, check each other a little bit early in the games. These offenses are so explosive that could go out the window. But an interesting bet that I've been playing with this week is both teams to punt on their first drive. You can get a parlay there for more than $3. And I think that's an interesting value as these defenses try to check each other early in the game.
If we are looking at the quarterback matchup, which is going to be fantastic to watch, but even without the numbers, we'll start first here as you see the graphic coming up on the screen. Let's talk legacy here, Mike. You have a game where the Kansas City Chiefs win this football game and move forward 3 straight Super Bowl championships, which is something nobody's ever done. That's in play. But I also want to talk to you, Mike, about the opposite end of it. The Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, repeated defeats against Kansas City. Is this one that will go down as, what did you want him to do? He's always playing Kansas City. Or, boy, this guy never stepped up to the plate when he needed to, even though one of those games really wasn't his fault. It was the defense's fault. Talk to me about legacy with these two quarterbacks, win or lose in this game.
Yeah, it's a good question, Donnie. And I think to Josh Allen, it wouldn't necessarily be fair. I think Lamar sees some of that too. Yeah. But Lamar turned the ball over a couple of times in the last game. If Josh Allen plays a terrific, clean game and he gets outscored by the Chiefs again, it's going to be a tough cross for him to bear, but it will be his to bear. I think a lot of times the public makes an assumption, well, they have to break through at some point. I'm telling you, this is the wrong franchise to talk about that with, because they never did break through in the Super Bowl, and they're having a tough time, obviously, breaking through against a historic dynasty. They can do it. They've obviously beaten them, so they know how to get it done. I think you might see a performance from Patrick Mahomes that is a little bit better than what we've seen from him throughout the year, where they've been playing more conservatively. This is his time to shine. I'm looking for a great quarterback performances, even though I think it'll be lower scoring. I don't think it's going to be a turnover fest, or boring Mahomes game like some people felt he was against the Texans, even though he made a spectacular play on the touchdown pass to Kelsey. So legacy, you're right. Mahomes will be in a new stratosphere, and Allen will have to deal with, how do we break through? Why can't we get this done?
To the victor goes the spoils, to the loser, sweeping reactions come Sunday night and Monday morning. That could define the career legacy for both quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes has the playoff pedigree and the benefit, hoping to lead Kansas City to a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl appearance. Josh Allen trying to get the Bills back to the biggest of games for the first time in more than 3 decades since the 1993 NFL season. Big Blue is here for a 2nd consecutive segment, from the AFC title game in Arrowhead to the NFC championship tilt in Philadelphia. That's next on the Early Line. A Football Friday to preview in full conference championship weekend in the National Football League. From the AFC championship game in Arrowhead to the NFC title matchup in the city of brotherly love at Lincoln Financial Field. Our first of 2 games on Sunday. It's the Eagles and the Commanders. Mike Blewitt here for a 2nd consecutive segment. And there, of course, you see the odds. A 6.5-point spread, Blue, in favor of the Birds. A total that stands at 47.5. Familiar foes in playoff settings, the Chiefs and the Bills in the AFC title matchup. Familiar foes from the same division in the NFC East in the NFC championship game. A best of 3, if you will, to decide a berth in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59. What are the odds telling you, Blewitt, about how the NFC championship game plays out on Sunday?
So obviously we saw this open at 4.5. It very quickly, went to 5.5, and now all the way up to nearly a touchdown. These teams have played really interesting games, not just versus one another, but in general. Washington and Philly have both played in these exciting games, Philly nearly blowing a huge lead last week, Washington obviously with the massive upset, and people talking about Cliff Kingsbury and Jayden Daniels' relationship. Does it vault Cliff Kingsbury into another head coaching gig because he's done so well? I'm fascinated by it simply because I think, Donnie, you would recognize this. Eagles fans, as good as they feel about the team and the fact that they've won 14 of the last 15 games, the way they close games out is, ironically, against the Commanders, a very difficult topic. They are an awesome team, and they are likely, in my opinion, going to get to the Super Bowl, but every game is a sweat as we get to the fourth quarter. Ironic when they have the power of the rushing attack that they possess.
If we are looking at this game, too, because you see the 6.5, you see the 47.5, and we'll start here. It's probably the biggest talking point of this game overall, Mike. The injury to Jalen Hurts last week, which bent his knee back. And professional sports, they're never going to tell you how healthy the quarterback is, how banged up he is. Did get a full practice in yesterday. If you're looking at this game, how worried are you for the Philadelphia Eagles with Jalen Hurts' accountability and also availability, as we like to say in this game?
Clearly concerned. I know we all know he's going to gut it out and be out there. I think what was more concerning towards the end of the game was not the fact that he couldn't rush the ball, because they had moved away from that, is that even in the pocket, he was compromised, right? He took the safety on a play where normally he would probably get out of it at least enough to throw the ball away, and he was unable to do that. I would think that would be my biggest concern. He's clearly an unbelievable athlete. He's known to be a tremendous gym rat, and I think he'll be able to work through this, but you probably don't see the level of rushing attempts that you might otherwise see. Saquon Barkley's rushing attempts number is up to 24.5. I don't think he can make that thing high enough the way he's been running at the end of the year. So I am concerned more about his mobility within the pocket and how do they address that. Dallas Goedert hasn't practiced in a couple of days. Are Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown going to be running shorter routes to get the ball out quick, slants and those types of routes to get the ball in their hands quickly and move the ball down the field? Philly hasn't thrown the ball much at all, Donnie. So I really need to see how Hurts is in the pocket. I think Ben has the right approach on looking at some live bets early.
His rushing yards prop for Jalen Hurts earlier this week, 29.5. It is up ever so slightly to 31 and a hook. Of course, 44 rushing yards on one play on the opening drive for Hurts and Philadelphia last week in the divisional round against L.A. We'll talk Jayden Daniels in just a moment, but 47.5, Blewitt, is that total for the AFC Championship game. You said it that the Chiefs are to win it, probably leans more to the under. You favor a side where the total stands. If the game goes over, does that benefit X team? If the game goes under in scoring, is at a premium, does that benefit another team? How do you correlate the total to who wins an NFC championship come Sunday?
I think you guys nailed it earlier. Washington winning an under game would surprise me. I think Philly wins an under game, in my opinion. I think that's how this plays out. But again, if you're talking under 47.5 and the Eagles at 6.5, you're starting to look at a place where you're threading the needle. It's not a huge spread, but it is nearly a touchdown. So the Eagles have to win a touchdown game, and it goes under 47.5. 27-20, is it that high scoring? I think Philly's going to want to keep the ball out of Jayden Daniels' hands even more than that. That's going to be the key to the game, is those long drives from the Eagles. They obviously aren't going to want to rely on Jake Elliott as much. He's been shaky in recent weeks, hits 3 field goals last week, but misses 2 extra points, which did factor into the end of the game. It was a sweat because of that. So, I think Washington winning an under game would surprise me. It would be the most surprising outcome. Their first halves this year, they played to 21-7 in the high-scoring game in the first half. But the first matchup that the Eagles won, just 7-3 in the first half. So finding a half angle is a little bit more difficult with these two teams, although I'd like to bet the first half over.
I'll tell you, we do take a look at these two quarterbacks, and certainly most of them can be dynamic. One a little bit banged up, but Jayden Daniels certainly is the lightning rod this week. He's been sensational in the regular season and even more sensational in the postseason. Now running into the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. Your expectations, you see the numbers, 223.5, 54.5 rushing yards, and 1.5 touchdown passes. Your expectations for him coming into this game are what?
I don't think he'll have a blow up game either way, Donnie. I don't think it's a miserable performance, but I don't think he has the electric performance that he has against the Lions, because I think the Eagles will do their best and successfully keep him off the field. The passing yards, I think that's possible. The rushing yards, he can hit an explosive play at any time. But 15 carries or something like that for Daniels, I don't see that happening. I think Philly will limit the amount of time he has the ball. The passing yards over, I can see happening simply because I think they'll have to at some point throw their way back into the game in the second half.
Well over this passing yards prop for Jayden Daniels in each of his two career playoff games. 268 against Tampa, nearly 300 against Detroit. Plenty more from the NFC Championship game next. NFC Championship game preview continues live right here on a Football Friday on the early line. Ben Stevens, Mike Blewitt, and Donnie Rightside continue to get you set for Conference Championship weekend. Now, let's go from the quarterbacks, Blue, to the one, the only Saquon Barkley. We can see from the props what the burden is expected for Barkley on Sunday to lead the Birds to a Super Bowl bid. Just how good will Saquon Barkley be against the Commanders' defense come Sunday afternoon?
I think Giants fans will be crying in their beer on Sunday afternoon while they're watching me and Joe Rainieri, because I think he brings it again. He was spectacular, obviously, against the Rams. I think they're going to lean on him. And there were moments when the Rams were selling out completely and stopping him. And it didn't matter, because eventually he broke through. He broke through in two different plays. And if you had his first quarter or his explosive play numbers, you were good to go. I think it's that kind of game for him again. I'm not saying over 200 yards, but I think this is an over contest we were just talking about Jalen Hurts and betting some of his over props early in the game to use some leverage here because the numbers are lower. But I think Saquon, you can expect a drumbeat of him carrying the ball. This is no Kenneth Gainwell. Let's work him in. No, this is Saquon all day. He's hit this number consistently on the over for rushing attempts in the games where they really need it.
I'll tell you what's interesting, Mike, is as you look back at the season, the minute they lost to Washington, I already had the rest of the season sort of played out here. Eagles would win, they would get their number 2 seed, but they would have the ability to rest in Week 18 Saquon Barkley for a playoff run. Because if you remember, if they did win that game in Washington where Devonta Smith catches one simple pass over the middle, they would have went full gas against the final game of the season, Giants, and he would have probably ran 25 more carries. They held him out. He's looked unbelievably fresh in this playoff run. That is going to be an advantage. By the way, 125.5. Is anybody out there actually betting this, going to themselves, you know what? I'm going to just take the under automatic, like he can't get 125. It's insanity. It's that high. But let's flip it over to the other side, because we can include also, Mike, Jayden Daniels into the equation, because he is going to run the football quite a bit. And by the way, priced as the favorite to lead the Washington Commanders in rushing at 54.5. But what are you getting out of Brian Robinson Jr. and more importantly, out of Austin Eckler in your mind this week, Mike?
What's crazy is that of all the guys that played in that Washington-Detroit game, Brian Robinson would have been well down the list of people you expect to score 2 touchdowns, but yet he did it. They did utilize him in a pretty significant way. Them running the ball from running backs has not been their strongest suit, but it's been pretty consistent. Kingsbury has really dialed up a lot of situations for them to be successful. I think they will probably end up leaning on Eckler in a passing game a little bit more. This Philly defensive front is a lot to deal with. Could be a potential mismatch that flips this game. The 36-33 loss to me is frankly a little bit more of an anomaly than how I expect this game to play out. And I think you can get a little bit out of these guys, but they'd be down the list, Donnie, for me on betting overs. I think Eckler in the passing game is where you'd want to attack Philly as opposed to running the ball into the teeth of the defense.
15 carries, 77 yards, 2 touchdowns for Brian Robinson Jr. last week in Detroit. Jayden Daniels still more carries, though, 16 in total. Blewitt, let's talk a couple of the top targets on Sunday afternoon. So many on this list. Terry McLaurin, a record-setting year for him in his career. De'Ami Brown has become a spark plug for this Washington aerial attack. A.J. Brown has not done much so far this postseason outside of Reed. If you were to look at one of these props, what gets your attention on Sunday?
You know what's crazy of this list is I think Zach Ertz's numbers are too low. I think Jayden Daniels is going to have to use him as a safety valve, and I could see Zach Ertz hitting some overs here. Philly linebacker Zach Bond in particular has been great at creating pressure and creating negative plays, but I think it's a little bit of a soft spot of the defense when it comes to passing. I like McLaurin as well. The Philly wide receivers, I would be more inclined to take Devontae Smith because the numbers are lower. They've been a difficult duo to bet on. They're not hitting these numbers consistently because Saquon is carrying the ball 30 times, 29, 31, 25, and 26 carries for Saquon. That does not include the passes that he's catching. It's an overwhelming target share and carry share from Saquon. So Terry McLaurin would be the guy of the wide receivers that I like best.
Mike Blewitt, we will see you on SportsGrid on Sunday for those conference championship matchups. Have a great weekend. Until then, hour 3 of the early line now. We welcome you to hour number 3, our third and final before we enter conference championship weekend in the National Football League. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for one more hour to continue to set the stage and preview both of our conference title matchups for Sunday. NFC Championship game between the Eagles and the Commanders. Who earns a spot in Super Bowl 59 in the Big Easy? Same question for the Bills and the Chiefs on Sunday evening inside Arrowhead in Kansas City. DRS will continue to break down the games. We'll look at the numbers and where those markets are, and of course, we'll give you a conference championship Sunday pick 6. Slightly different because there's not as many options, but we'll have some fun to end out this hour with best bets entering the weekend.
Yes, we get minutes closer to the kickoffs on Sunday afternoon, which is what we've been setting the table for at the SportsGrid Network all week long. It'll finally come to fruition. You get to see these Titanic games play out, win your bets, lose your bets, cry in your beer, cheer in celebration at your team's victory, and then we wait 2 weeks until the Super Bowl. So we got a big hour to get the people ready for anticipation of what they need to expect on Sunday afternoon.
And, of course, Donnie Rightside will be live alongside Kevin Walsh and Jolisi on Sunday for Pro Football Today. New times, right? 9 to noon, if I'm not mistaken. 9 a.m. to 12. Yeah. 9 to noon
up a little
Eastern
earlier,
on the
home
sports.
a little earlier.
Yeah.
Yep,
come on.
We'll be ready.
No weather to contend with in South Jersey, Philadelphia this weekend. Just a stop at whatever pizza joint DRS wants to hit.
Steaks.
Get a pie. Yeah. You're going to be ready to go. Again, question needs to be asked. Wife and the kiddo, they going to be watching the game with you on Sunday? Or are you down in the bunker getting ready to go for the birds?
Yeah, no, I'll be down in the bunker, but sometimes they'll mosey on down. But they understand what the game play. Usually it ends up like this. The wife and the kid are in the family room watching the game upstairs. I'm down in the bunker watching the game. And then it sort of figures into the kid might stay on the second level. The wife then migrates to the bedroom and watches the game. I watch on the lower. So we have all 3 levels involved with the Philadelphia Eagles. And just a matter of how good the Eagles are doing, do I travel all the way up to the bedroom just to tell the wife, did you see that play? Knowing she probably didn't see that play, but I want to make sure she thinks she saw that play.
I love that nobody spends any time with anybody except for a couple of commercial breaks to talk about I get it. Listen, I do get it. And DRS, there is the handicaps that we have for Sunday. They're the best bets and the picks that we will make and the wagers we will bet. There is also what we want to see. And I understand it, right? Part of the conversation about the Chiefs' dynastic run. Ooh, it's fun to start to look at an elite team playing at an elite level year in, year out. And then it becomes, all right, we've seen enough of this already, 7 consecutive years in an AFC championship game. Can we get the Buffalo Bills to a Super Bowl and to have Bills Mafia take over the Big Easy for the first time in more than 3 decades would be Buffalo playing in a Super Bowl game. It would be fun to see the rookie quarterback, Jayden Daniels, make history. We just saw the Eagles and the Chiefs 2 years ago. We don't want to see it again, right? So what do the people want for our Super Bowl matchup in Super Bowl 59? We find out together and Fade the Public.
It's time for Fade the Public.
All right, that's got to come to a close. We love Joe
Intel.
Reese, but that
Intel.
is done. A lot of intel coming from him, no doubt about it, for Sunday. And again, Donnie, that would be the betting perspective, right? What is the smart play? Do you think you have an edge on the spread, the money line, the total, whatever it might be? And then there is what we want to see. And the public is making it pretty clear. They want to see something we have not in a very long time. The Commanders are playing in their first conference championship game since 1991. Of course, they won a Super Bowl that season. The Bills have not reached a Super Bowl since 1993. We're talking more than 3 decades for both franchises. So nearly 53% of the public saying, yeah, we want Buffalo and Washington in New Orleans in just 2 weekends. Bills, Eagles, 27.5. The game the public does not want to see was Super Bowl 57, which is what we saw a couple of years ago in Phoenix. The Chiefs and the Eagles, only 8.2% of the vote. But really, the public just doesn't want to see Kansas City back in yet another Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, that's really the prevailing notion, even though the networks would want to see it, because the one thing that the Chiefs have over everybody is they're going to have the Swifties. They'll tune in and watch the football game, which is always good for the ratings. But also, number 2, we love to see dynasties fall. Like, you might want to cheer for the dynasty and be a fan of it, but equal amounts of people want to see the dynasty fall, which would be the Kansas City Chiefs. But also understand this from a Bills perspective. It's like nightmare fuel for them. You say, well, why would that be? If you remember that run to 4 straight Super Bowls back in the day, and you're going to say, all right, hey, Bills, you're going to face an NFC East team. And they're like, come on, man, we're 0-4 against the NFC when we get to the Super Bowl, which is what they were in the early 90s. And no matter what, you're going to have an NFC East team, whether it be the Bills or the Commanders, lining up here in the Super Bowl. But for me, of course, I'm going to vote for Eagles, Bills. It's fun. It's exciting. My team is there. You see the Bills, Commanders get the 52% because people just like things new. And also, there's a lot of people that say, I just hate the Philadelphia Eagles, because outside of, are there Commanders fans now? Because it's been 25 years where you never ran into a Commanders fan anywhere. And now all of a sudden the Commanders in the Super Bowl. So we're led to believe. I just think the people want to see the Bills, which I agree with. It's a fun new brand, and it's 2 weeks of not talking about can Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes win a Super Bowl when it seems like they're there every single year. So I understand the people with the newness, and I get the way this poll's going.
It would be a great atmosphere to have Bills Mafia make their way to the Big Easy. That would be an electric atmosphere, no doubt about it. I really do think it's a fade of the Chiefs in terms of public sentiment. Everybody would want to see Kansas City sit at home and watch a Super Bowl right alongside, take in the commercials, and eat some wings. But again, when you look at what is most likely to happen, Chiefs-Eagles is still that betting favorite at plus 145, a rematch of Super Bowl 57 just 2 years later in Super Bowl 59. But it's only 1.5 in favor of KC and about 1/4 of difference on the money line. So the Eagles and the Bills not all that far behind. If the Commanders were to pull the upset in the NFC Championship game, that's where you get the big plus money prices. And Donnie, it does go to say that the Super Bowl 59 favorite entering this conference championship weekend is not Kansas City, it's not Buffalo, it's the team out of the NFC that is nearly a touchdown favorite at home. It's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, it's simple. It's just paint by numbers right now. You're looking at the team that's most likely to advance. It is the Philadelphia Eagles. Therefore, in order to win a Super Bowl, Ben, what do you have to do? You got to at least get there. So that's why the price points are set up that way. Then they'll fall back once we actually get the Super Bowl. If it's the Eagles, they'll go to that slight underdog, -1, 1.5, depending on injuries that happen in the NFC and AFC championship games. But that's the way it's going to play out. And for me, again, if the Eagles lose, it will be devastating. But Washington being in the Super Bowl will be fun to see, because a rookie quarterback who obviously is probably going to have an electric game in Philadelphia, if they're able to upset them, that'll be a fun talking point, and specifically if it's lined up against the Buffalo Bills. But I think everybody once again would then unite in the Super Bowl by saying, please, just not the Chiefs again winning. So I think anybody that plays the Chiefs will probably be the public favorite just by default at that point.
The Eagles would be a slight favorite against both, or a slight underdog, rather, against both Buffalo and Kansas City. 1.5 in money line prices, very reminiscent of what we have seen in the divisional round for Buffalo and Baltimore, and now in Conference Championship Sunday between the Chiefs and the Bills. What is really interesting, DRS, KC a slight favorite in Arrowhead, a slightly better price to win a Lombardi Trophy this year than Buffalo, but Buffalo a slightly larger favorite against Philadelphia than that of Kansas City against the Birds. Again, we're talking about 6 cents on the money line, but Buffalo minus 124, KC minus 118. And I do believe it is worth betting Philly right now to win Super Bowl 59 if you think they have the edge against the Commanders, because you'll have a decent money line price for New Orleans.